The scariest wounds are the ones no one can see, not the bruises, not the scars. I'm talking about the kind that sit quietly inside a person for years, smiling on the outside while something inside slowly breaks. Most people don't even realize it's happening to them. I once knew a guy named Daniel. If you met him, you'd think he had it all together. Good job. Calm personality. Always the one giving advice. The strong one in the group. The one who never complained. But what nobody knew was that every night, when the lights went out and the world got quiet, his chest felt heavy. Not like a heart attack, more like something sitting on his soul. Silent trauma doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up in small ways. You overthink simple text messages. You feel tired even after sleeping 8 hours. You laugh with friends, but inside, you feel disconnected. You don't even know why. And because you can't point to a specific moment and say, "This is why I'm hurting," you convince yourself you're fine. If you've ever felt that way, stay with me. This story might hit closer to home than you expect. Daniel grew up in a house where emotions were treated like weakness. His dad believed boys don't cry. His mom believed problems should stay inside the house. So when Daniel felt scared, confused, or hurt, he learned one thing very quickly: stay quiet. The first time he remembers swallowing his feelings was when he was 8. He had been bullied at school, pushed around, called names. He came home ready to tell someone. But when he saw his dad stressed after work and his mom arguing about bills, he decided his pain wasn't important enough. So he said nothing. That moment might not sound big, but that's how silent trauma begins. Not with one huge event, but 1,000 small moments where your feelings are ignored, dismissed, or made to feel inconvenient. As Daniel got older, he became the easy kid, the one teachers liked, the one who didn't cause problems. But inside, he felt like a pressure cooker. Every time he wanted to cry but didn't. Every time he felt angry but smiled instead. Every time he felt lonely but told people he was just tired. By the time he reached his 20s, he didn't even know what he felt anymore. He just knew something was off. Relationships didn't last long. He would pull away the moment someone got too close. Compliments made him uncomfortable. Silence made him anxious. But it couldn't explain why. That's the thing about silent trauma. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like independence, like strength, like maturity. But underneath, it's fear. Fear of being a burden. Fear of being too much. Fear of being seen. One night, after a long day at work, Daniel sat in his car in the driveway for almost an hour. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't listening to music. He just stared at the steering wheel. And for the first time, he admitted something to himself. "I don't feel okay." That was the first crack in the wall he had built around himself for over 20 years. But what he didn't know was that breaking that wall would force him to face something he had been running from his entire life. And once he opened that door, there would be no going back. Sitting in that car, staring at the steering wheel, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not sadness, not anger. It was more like awareness. A quiet realization that the way he had been living wasn't really living at all. It was surviving. He tried to shake it off. Told himself he was just tired. Everyone gets tired. Everyone feels stressed. But this felt different. It wasn't about work. It wasn't about money. It was deeper, like something old was finally demanding attention. Over the next few days, small memories started surfacing. Moments he hadn't thought about in years. Being laughed at in middle school when he tried to speak up. His dad telling him, "Stop being sensitive." His first breakup, when he acted cold, even though he cried alone in his room. Each memory felt small on its own, but together, they formed a pattern. Daniel realized he had built his entire personality around not needing anyone. He prided himself on being self-sufficient, never asking for help, never depending on others. But if he was honest, it wasn't strength. It was defense. If you never let anyone close, they can't hurt you. If you never show pain, no one can use it against you. The problem was, walls don't just keep pain out. They also keep connection out. His relationships had always followed the same script. In the beginning, he was attentive, calm, supportive. But the moment someone asked him to open up, he'd change. He'd get distant, quiet, sometimes even irritated. He didn't know how to explain what he felt, because he didn't have the language for it. One evening, his girlfriend asked him a simple question. Why don't you ever tell me when you re-upset? He froze. It wasn't that he didn't want to tell her. He just didn't know how. His mind went blank. His chest tightened. And instead of answering honestly, he shrugged and said, "I'm fine. I just don't think everything needs to be talked about." That conversation ended the relationship a few weeks later. When she left, she didn't accuse him of being mean or unfaithful. She said something that stuck with him. "It feels like you're never fully here, like you're standing next to me, but emotionally, you're miles away." At first, he felt defensive, but alone later that night, those words replayed in his head. Emotionally, miles away. That's what silent trauma does. It disconnects you from your own feelings so deeply that you start living on autopilot. You show up physically, but inside, you're guarded, detached, numb. Daniel began noticing other signs. He couldn't relax. Even during good moments, there was tension in his body. When friends joked around, he laughed, but part of him scanned for hidden criticism. When someone praised him, he brushed it off. Compliments didn't feel real. They felt suspicious. He had learned, without realizing it, that vulnerability equals danger. And because he never processed the pain from his childhood, it didn't disappear. It just changed form. It became anxiety, overthinking, emotional shutdown, a constant sense that something bad was about to happen, even when everything was fine. One weekend, he visited his parents. At dinner, his father made a small comment about how kids these days are too soft. Everyone laughed. Daniel laughed too. But inside, something shifted. He suddenly saw the pattern clearly. That belief had shaped him more than he understood. On the drive home, instead of blasting music like he usually did, he drove in silence. His mind wasn't erasing this time. It was connecting dots. He realized he had never been allowed to feel. Not fully, not safely. And if he wanted things to change, he would have to do something he had avoided his entire life. He would have to face those feelings instead of burying them. But facing them meant risking something he wasn't sure he could handle. Because once you open old wounds, you don't control what comes out. And Daniel was about to find out just how deep his went. A week later, Daniel did something that felt completely unnatural to him. He booked a therapy session. Even saying the word therapy in his head made him uncomfortable. A voice inside whispered, "You don't need this. You're not broken. Other people have it worse." But another voice, quieter yet stronger, said, "If you don't deal with this now, you'll carry it forever." The first session was awkward. He sat on the couch with his arms crossed, giving short, safe answers. It was fine. Nothing major. Just stress. He treated it like a job interview instead of a place to fall apart. Then the therapist asked a simple question. "When was the first time you remember feeling like your emotions didn't matter?" At first, Daniel tried to think of something recent. A breakup. A bad day at work. But his mind drifted further back. To that 8-year-old boy standing in the kitchen doorway, watching his parents argue, deciding his bullying story wasn't important enough to share. His throat tightened. He hadn't thought about that moment in years. Not because it wasn't important, but because he had trained himself to ignore it. He cleared his throat and said, "I guess, when I was a kid." The therapist didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just listened. For the first time in his life, Daniel spoke about how lonely he felt growing up, how he learned to read the room before speaking, and how he became the easy one so he wouldn't add pressure to an already tense home, how he convinced himself that needing comfort was selfish. Halfway through the session, he realized something surprising. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't weak. He was just a kid who adapted. Silent trauma isn't always about what happened to you. Sometimes it's about what didn't happen, the comfort that never came, the reassurance you never heard, the safety you never felt. As weeks passed, the sessions got harder. Talking opened doors he had sealed shut. He started noticing how his body reacted in certain situations. When someone raised their voice, even slightly, his heart raced. When someone didn't reply to a message quickly, his mind created worst-case scenarios. It wasn't random. It was his nervous system, still stuck in survival mode. One night, after a long session, he sat in his apartment and felt something unfamiliar. Anger. Not explosive, not loud. Just a deep, steady anger at the fact that he had spent so many years thinking something was wrong with him, when in reality, he was responding exactly how a scared child would. That anger scared him at first, but this time, he didn't push it away. He let himself feel it. And then came sadness. Not the heavy, confusing kind. This was clear, and he felt sad for the younger version of himself. The boy who thought staying silent would keep everyone safe, who believed love had to be earned by being low. For the first time, Daniel cried without hiding it. No locked bathroom door, no pillow to muffle the sound. Just honest tears in an empty room. And here's the strange part. Instead of feeling weaker, he felt lighter. Healing wasn't dramatic. There was no big breakthrough music moment. It was small shifts. Noticing when he shut down, catching himself before saying I'm fine when he wasn't, letting friends see him on bad days instead of disappearing. But healing also came with discomfort, because when you stop numbing pain, you also start feeling fear more clearly. And Daniel soon realized that opening up didn't just bring relief. It brought risk. Risk of rejection. Risk of being misunderstood. Risk of someone seeing the real him and deciding it was too much. That fear would be tested sooner than he expected. A few months into therapy, Daniel met someone new. Her name was Maya. She wasn't loud or dramatic. She had a calm presence, the kind that made conversations feel easy. The first few dates were simple cough, long walks, late-night talks about childhood dreams, and random memories. For once, Daniel didn't feel like he had to perform. But comfort can be deceptive. The closer they got, the more his old patterns started whispering. When Maya didn't text back for a few hours, his chest tightened. When she asked deeper questions about his past, he felt the urge to deflect with humor. When she told him she liked how open he was, he almost laughed, because she had no idea how much effort it took. One evening, they were sitting in her car after dinner. The conversation slowed. The kind of silence that invites honesty. Maya looked at him and said softly, "You seem different sometimes. Like you go somewhere far away in your head." Where do you go? There it was. The moment his nervous system had been preparing for, his instinct was to smile and say, "Nowhere. I'm just tired." Safe. Controlled. But something inside him paused. He remembered sitting in that therapy room. Remembered the 8-year-old boy in the kitchen doorway. Remembered how many relationships ended because he chose silence over truth. So instead of shutting down, he took a breath. It felt heavy, unnatural, but he stayed with it. "I think," he said slowly, "I get scared." The words felt foreign. "Scared of what?" she asked gently. "Scared that if I show too much, it'll be too much." He didn't look at her. He stared at the dashboard, waiting for the shift, the withdrawal, the judgment, the subtle change in tone that would confirm his fear. But it didn't come. Instead, she reached for his hand. "Thank you for telling me," she said. That simple sentence hit harder than he expected. No lecture, no teasing, no discomfort, just acceptance. In that moment, Daniel realized something important. His fear wasn't crazy. It made sense. It was built from years of emotional silence, but it wasn't always accurate. Vulnerability could be safe. Vulnerability could be connection. Over the following weeks, Daniel made conscious choices. He reached out to old friends he had distanced himself from. He talked openly with Maya about fears he had never admitted, even to himself. He journaled late at night, pouring out thoughts he didn't even realize he was holding. Each small step was uncomfortable, sometimes painful. But with every act of honesty, the weight inside him lifted a little more. Healing wasn't linear. There were mornings when he woke up, anxious for no reason. Nights when old memories surfaced and made his chest tight. Moments when he slipped into old patterns of avoidance. But now he recognized it, and recognition gave him choice. He could pause. He could breathe. He could remind himself that feeling deeply didn't make him weak, it made him human. One evening, sitting on his balcony watching the city lights reflect on the rain-soaked streets, Daniel realized something important. Silent trauma doesn't disappear overnight. It doesn't vanish because you read a quote or watch a video. It takes patience. It takes honesty. It takes facing parts of yourself you've spent years avoiding. But it can be healed. And the most powerful part of his journey wasn't becoming perfect. It was becoming real. The realization hit Daniel one rainy evening. He had been talking with Maya about a work problem when the conversation shifted unexpectedly. She paused, looked at him seriously, and said, "You know, being strong isn't about never breaking. It's about showing up even when you feel broken." Those words echoed in his mind. All the years he spent hiding, pretending, keeping quiet, it wasn't strength. It was survival, and survival alone doesn't teach you how to live fully. Strength, real strength, came from showing up, from being vulnerable, from letting someone see the cracks without fear. He thought back to his childhood, to the 80-year-old boy who learned silence as armor. That boy had survived, but he hadn't lived. Daniel realized that silent trauma had robbed him of moments he could have experienced fully, the laughter without pretense, the crying without shame, the joy without guilt. And now, for the first time, he understood he didn't have to live that way anymore. Your pain doesn't have to define you. The invisible wounds you carry, the silent traumas that whisper in your mind, they don't make you weak. They make you human. And when you face them, when you speak them aloud, when you allow yourself to feel, you open the door to freedom, to healing, and to living fully. The silent trauma that destroys people from the inside docentavi to wean. Awareness, honesty, and courage can turn even the deepest wounds into pathways for growth. Daniel learned that, and so can anyone willing to face the quiet inside themselves.